words, delivered with a practiced, almost surgical precision, felt less like a statement and more like a cold, sharp blade. Mr. Sterling, we acknowledge your 2 decades of peerless dedication to Metropolis designs. However, the board has charted a new course, a more streamlined trajectory for urban development. My gaze met Cassandra Hayes's across the expanse of the polished granite table. Metropolis's newly crowned CEO, her smile was a brittle facade, as unyielding and devoid of warmth as the steel skeletons of the very skyscrapers we brought to life. Beside her, Julian Thorne, the head of Project Efficiency, seemed absorbed by the sterile glow of his minimalist tablet, a stark, jarring counterpoint to the worn, ink-stained blueprints that were extensions of my own hands, chronicles of a quarter century. I was 58. Moments before this pronouncement, I had been the chief urban architect, the very heart of Metropolis's iconic cityscapes, the keeper of secrets etched into every curve and line. 20 years. A lifetime, truly, poured into the intricate ballet of urban flow, the quiet strength of resilient infrastructure, the soul of public spaces that had garnered awards, and, more importantly, the unwavering trust of communities. Cassandra, undeterred by the sudden, heavy silence, continued. We are unequivocally confident that Project Nexus will redefine our design paradigm. We anticipate your full cooperation in ensuring a seamless transition of your methodologies. My fingers, accustomed to the delicate dance of a drafting pen, closed around the single sheet of paper before me. My termination notice. Project Nexus, I echoed, the name tasting like ash on my tongue, my voice a calm river hiding a raging current beneath. How intriguing. Because, unless the very fabric of time has warped in the last hour, our entire structural integrity analysis for the Ethereum Tower is slated for its critical, sterling calibration at precisely 3:0 p.m. today. A process, I might add, that demands my unique biometric and conceptual authentication to even begin, let alone complete. Cassandra's brittle smile fractured, a hairline crack appearing in her carefully constructed composure. Julian, startled from his digital reverie, finally lifted his eyes, a fleeting flicker of genuine concern disturbing their practiced blankness. His sleek tablet, once a symbol of his perceived modernity, suddenly seemed an inadequate toy. What in God's name are you talking about, Sterling? There's no such sterling calibration in any official design protocol. I rose, slowly, deliberately, adjusting the cuff of my architect's jacket. The faint, comforting scent of drafting paper and strong coffee, the very essence of my life's work, clung to the fabric. Oh, but there is. A ghost in the machine, perhaps. I conceived and implemented it myself, 15 years ago, after a critical structural flaw nearly brought down the original Millennium Plaza. It is a proprietary, utterly undocumented sequence of seismic stress tests and resonant frequency tunings. A ballet of precision performed by hand, guided by years of empirical data, yes, but more so by an intuitive understanding that cannot be codified. Every quarter, before any major structural design receives its final, immutable approval, it undergoes this calibration. And then, it demands my specific biometric and conceptual authentication to be released for construction. That's me. Or rather, that was me. Cassandra's face, once so assured, drained to a shade of sickly green, like aging, decaying concrete. You're bluffing, Sterling. You wouldn't dare jeopardize the company's projects. I turned, walking towards the heavy boardroom doors, pausing at the threshold for one last lingering look. The final contract signing with Ethereum Developments for their new Chicago waterfront district is at 4 p.m., a $75 million deal, I believe. You might find it prudent to ascertain how to get those Ethereum Tower blueprints approved for groundbreaking before then. Otherwise, it will be quite a difficult conversation. The cold, echoing silence from the boardroom was my only reply, as the elevator doors hissed shut behind me, carrying me down into the subterranean parking garage beneath Metropolis Design's gleaming Chicago headquarters. I could already hear the frantic whispers escalating into shouts. My old Ford F-150, a loyal companion through countless late nights, sat in my usual spot, the very spot Julian Thorne had, just last week, attempted to reassign to his fresh-faced, utterly inexperienced intern, citing project leads deserving premium access. I settled behind the wheel, the quiet hum of the engine, a stark, unsettling counterpoint to the impending chaos that would soon engulf the glass tower above. 2:55 p.m. My phone, a relentless harbinger of the storm, began to vibrate, its discordant jingle echoing in the confined space of the garage. I had not merely worked for Metropolis Designs. I had breathed life into its very reputation for innovative and resilient urban planning. It began 2 decades ago, in a cramped, sun-drenched studio in downtown Chicago. There, I meticulously sketched urban renewal plans for struggling communities, transforming abstract ideas into tangible hope. My father, Elias Sterling Sr., Metropolis's founder, was the visionary, the one who charmed clients and painted grand pictures. I was the silent craftsman, the one who orchestrated the intricate dance of structural integrity, aesthetic integration, and functional design, the relentless pursuit of urban perfection. We were partners then, a family business built not just on ambition, but on unwavering trust and an almost obsessive commitment to enduring quality. The first subtle tremor in that foundation emerged 5 years ago. My father, weary but content, had retired, passing the torch to his hand-picked successor, Cassandra Hayes. Cassandra, a rising star plucked from the glittering, fast-paced world of commercial real estate, spoke in endless hollow pronouncements of disruptive innovation and lean design models. She saw our robust, meticulously crafted design process not as a testament to resilience, but as an overly complex legacy system, a relic to be discarded. The warning signs, initially, were whispers. She'd sweep into critical city council presentations, utterly unprepared, then interrupt me mid-discussion, suggesting cost-cutting measures that threatened long-standing, ironclad relationships with the very local contractors and regulatory bodies who trusted our judgment. She unilaterally dismantled our dedicated structural analysis team, replacing them with an impersonal, AI-driven simulation system that, with infuriating regularity, flagged legitimate, hand-calculated stress points as inefficient, a testament to its blindness, not our flaws. But the true shift, the insidious corrosion, began when she brought in Julian Thorne. A young, ambitious MBA, he was ostensibly hired to assist with global design optimization. Yet, Julian, with a chilling predictability, spent most of his time shadowing my every move, asking pointed, probing questions about our proprietary design algorithms, the intricate backup systems, and the fail-safe protocols that were the very sinews of our project's resilience. 2 months ago, I caught Julian attempting to extract data from my encrypted, intensely personal design archives. When confronted, he stammered, claiming Cassandra had authorized it for redundancy and future scalability. When I pressed Cassandra, her dismissal was swift and dismissive, standard protocol for a forward-thinking company. Then, last week, the questions began to sharpen. Cassandra started asking unsettlingly specific details about my personal biometric authorization key for the Sterling calibration. She claimed the board, in its infinite wisdom, was concerned about single-point vulnerabilities and demanded multi-factor authentication for all critical functions. I, ever the loyal soldier, told her I'd consider implementing a phased rollout. I should have known then, should have seen the storm gathering. I should have realized Julian wasn't a helping hand, but a tool for dismantling my very essence within the company. I should have understood that every process I'd refined, every proprietary technique I'd painstakingly developed, was being systematically cataloged, dissected, and prepared for my inevitable, orchestrated departure. But hope, a stubborn, foolish thing, still clung to me. I trusted Metropolis. I trusted the enduring legacy my father had poured his life into. My wife, Maria, with the quiet wisdom of years, saw it all. She'd watched me return home, the vibrant passion I once held for my work slowly eroding, replaced by a weary frustration. She listened, patiently, as I recounted meetings where Cassandra would casually dismiss my 20 years of hard-won expertise, only to parade my ideas as her own at the next quarterly review. "She's not just undermining you, Elias," Maria had warned me, her voice soft but firm, over a quiet dinner last month. "She's stripping away your value, piece by piece. When she's done, there'll be nothing left but an empty blueprint, a hollow shell of what you built." 5 minutes left. The call, the one I had known was coming, arrived with chilling punctuality. Cassandra Hayes' name, a stark white against the dark screen, flashed on my phone. "Elias, we need to talk." This instant, her voice, usually so composed, held a tremor. "No, we don't," I replied, my own voice, a steady anchor in the swirling chaos. "Listen, perhaps I was overly direct in there. The board has been demanding aggressive changes, pushing for transformative leadership. I was trying to protect you, Elias, truly." The familiar lie. a threadbare cloak she'd worn for months. The same threadbare cloak she'd used when she took credit for my groundbreaking work. When she hired Julian behind my back. When she began systematically excluding me from decisions about the very cityscapes I'd meticulously crafted. The Sterling calibration initiates in 4 minutes. Cassandra. Okay, look. What do you want? We can offer you a substantial severance package, an executive consulting role, generous stock options. I almost laughed. A hollow, bitter sound. Just minutes ago, she dismissed me in front of the entire board, as if I were some junior draftsman caught pilfering office supplies. Now she was desperate. Now she wanted to negotiate. I want you to understand something, Cassandra, I said, my tone low, deliberate, each word a stone placed carefully. For 20 years, I've dedicated my life to building a reputation for unparalleled urban design that made you and Metropolis Designs incredibly wealthy. I've covered for your operational oversights, fixed the systemic problems you created with your disruptive innovations, and watched you claim credit for work I did with my own hands. I'm not finished. You brought Julian in to systematically learn my job so you could dispose of me. You've been planning this for months, perhaps longer. The only variable you didn't account for was this. 3 minutes. Through the thick concrete walls of the parking garage, I could discern distant shouts, the frantic, almost desperate revving of car engines as people scrambled to escape. Someone, no doubt, was racing to the main design studio, foolishly believing they could manually override the calibration sequence. They couldn't. I'd learned years ago to build fail-safes into fail-safes, to protect Metropolis's critical design processes even from itself. More accurately, from its incompetent leadership. What do you want? Cassandra's voice, now truly tinged with genuine panic, cracked through the speaker, a desperate plea. I want you to remember this moment, I said, my voice unwavering. I want you to remember that for 20 years, I was fiercely loyal to Metropolis. I believed in this company, believed in what we were building together, and you carelessly threw it all away because you were too afraid of appearing anything less than ruthless in front of your board. 2 minutes. The Ethereum Development's contract signing is in 58 minutes, I continued, my voice chillingly calm, a quiet pronouncement of doom. $75 million. Without a perfectly calibrated Ethereum Tower blueprint, you've got nothing to present, nothing to build. Without the client database, you don't even have their direct contact information. I could hear muffled voices in the background now, a chorus of rising panic, people shouting instructions, keyboards clicking frantically, uselessly. How do I fix this, Elias? Cassandra pleaded, her voice barely a whisper. 1 minute. You don't, I said, and with a quiet click, ended the call. I started my F-150, the engine purring a low, satisfied rumble, and slowly drove towards the exit. In 60 seconds, every light in the Metropolis Design Studio would flicker into darkness. Every CAD station would go silent. Every rendering farm, every server, every piece of critical equipment that kept the global enterprise running would grind to a halt. And for the first time in 20 years, Cassandra Hayes would have to solve a problem without me. The global design shutdown at Metropolis Designs lasted precisely 5 hours and 12 minutes. I knew this with an almost detached certainty, for I was comfortably seated in the Urban Canvas Cafe, a tranquil bistro overlooking the Chicago River. There, I savored a late lunch, observing the unfolding chaos on the news channel mounted above the bar. Architectural giant experiences unprecedented design halt, scrolled the urgent banner across the screen, while a visibly flustered reporter stood outside the darkened Metropolis headquarters, interviewing bewildered employees who had been summarily sent home. My phone, a relentless digital tormentor, rang incessantly. Cassandra, 19 times. Julian, 12. Julian Thorne from Project Efficiency, 3 times. I allowed them all to drift into the void of voicemail. At 4 p.m., the studio lights finally flickered back to life, a faint, tentative glow. I understood the desperate measures. They had, no doubt, summoned an emergency engineering team, bypassed the Sterling calibration, and were now painstakingly attempting to restart critical design stations from scratch. It would be a Sisyphean task, taking them days, perhaps weeks, to restore full functionality and, more critically, to address the gaping quality issues I had, by my absence, left exposed. At 4:37 p.m., my phone chimed with a number I didn't recognize. Mr. Sterling, this is Attorney Daniel Hayes from Hayes & Associates. I represent Metropolis Designs. We need to discuss your highly disruptive actions today. A lawyer. Cassandra, predictably, was already activating her legal cavalry. "I haven't done anything illegal, Mr. Hayes," I stated, my voice calm, unyielding. "Sabotage is a federal offense, Mr. Sterling. Intentionally disrupting critical corporate infrastructure, causing massive financial harm to a multinational corporation. The U.S. Attorney's Office might be very interested in your activities." A faint, almost imperceptible smile touched my lips. They truly believed they could intimidate me with legal threats, the same worn-out tactic Cassandra had employed for months with her veiled threats to my job security. I implemented a standard, board-approved security protocol designed to protect sensitive company data and ensure project integrity, I clarified, each word a precise cut. The system worked exactly as intended. If Metropolis Designs no longer employs qualified personnel to operate their proprietary technology, that's not my problem, Mr. Hayes. You deliberately created a situation where you were the only individual who could restore critical global operations, he countered, his voice hardening, a hint of frustration creeping in. I created a situation where the chief urban architect had to authorize system recalibrations. I was the chief urban architect until approximately 2:30 p.m. today. The lawyer fell silent for a moment, a pause heavy with his dawning realization. "Mr. Sterling, I think you're severely underestimating the gravity of your situation. The Ethereum Development's contract, worth $75 million, was irrevocably lost due to your actions. Multiple other high-profile international clients experienced critical service disruptions and design quality issues, resulting in substantial penalties. The cumulative damages could easily reach into the hundreds of millions. Hundreds of millions. Cassandra, no doubt, had fed him inflated, panic-driven figures, hoping to scare me into immediate, desperate compliance. The Ethereum Development's contract was lost because Cassandra Hayes fired her chief urban architect 10 minutes before a critical signing, I asserted, my voice unwavering. Poor management decisions and a blatant lack of foresight are not my responsibility, Mr. Hayes. We have compelling documentation showing you created unauthorized access restrictions, implemented shutdown protocols without official board approval, and deliberately withheld crucial information necessary for continued global business operations. Now, the full picture emerged. They weren't merely threatening me with criminal charges. They were meticulously building a civil case, a calculated attempt to claim I'd maliciously sabotaged the company. Cassandra intended to sue me for damages, to strip me of everything I owned, to financially ruin me so completely that I could never again pose a competitive threat. "Document this, Mr. Hayes," I said, my voice laced with steel, a quiet promise. "Any legal action taken against me will result in full, public disclosure of all Metropolis Designs' structural vulnerabilities. Every bypass safety check, every compromised material supplier, every reckless shortcut Cassandra and Julian approved against my vehement recommendations. Let's see how many city councils, how many developers, want to work with a company whose former chief urban architect testifies under oath that their iconic buildings are fundamentally flawed, negligently designed, and ripe for catastrophic structural failures." The line went quiet, the silence a testament to his shock. "You're threatening to reveal proprietary information, Mr. Sterling. That's a serious accusation. I'm promising to tell the unvarnished truth about the company's actual design capabilities and its leadership's critical failings under oath. If necessary," I corrected him, my resolve unshakable. I hung up and with a quiet sigh, ordered another cup of coffee. 20 minutes later, Cassandra called again. "Elias, we need to meet face to face. No lawyers, no board members, just us. Please. This is spiraling out of control. We used to be colleagues. Perhaps there's a way to resolve this that works for everyone involved." I considered her plea. Cassandra was genuinely scared now, stripped bare of her corporate armor, realizing that hollow legal threats wouldn't make her insurmountable problems vanish. She desperately needed something from me, and for the first time, she was finally ready to negotiate from a position of absolute, abject weakness. "The Urban Canvas Cafe on the Chicago River," I said. "1 hour. I'll be there." But even as I spoke the words, a quiet certainty settled within me. She wouldn't come alone. Cassandra arrived 43 minutes later, Julian Thorne trailing in her wake like a shadow. I watched them through the bistro window, a detached observer. Cassandra, a portrait of haggard desperation, paced frantically outside, her movements jerky and uncoordinated. Julian, slumped in the passenger seat of a sleek black sedan I didn't recognize, seemed to shrink further into himself. A company car, no doubt. Another fleeting perk Cassandra had authorized for her rapidly diminishing favor with her new preferred employee. They settled across from me in a secluded corner booth. the polished wood reflecting their strained faces. Cassandra looked as if she hadn't slept in days, her eyes sunken and bloodshot, betraying the toll of her self-inflicted crisis. Julian avoided all eye contact, his face pale and clammy, the picture of a young man terrified of the precipice he found himself on. The kid was clearly nervous, probably terrified about what his unwitting role in today's chaotic events might cost him. "Coffee?" I offered, a faint, almost imperceptible smile playing on my lips. Cassandra shook her head, her movements abrupt. "Let's just get to business, Elias. What's it going to take to make this go away?" Her voice was hoarse, stripped of its usual corporate polish. "Make what go away?" I inquired, feigning innocence. "Don't play games, Elias. You know exactly what I'm talking about. The legal threats, the structural vulnerabilities, all of it. Name your price." Her desperation was palpable, a bitter perfume in the air. I leaned back into the booth, crossing my arms, a picture of calm authority. "You truly think this is about money, Cassandra?" "Everything's about money, Elias. Always has been, always will be." That was Cassandra Hayes in a nutshell. Her world, reduced to cold hard cash, profit margins, and quarterly reports. She'd never understood that some people worked for reasons far beyond their bank account balance, for the sheer love of creation, for the pursuit of excellence. "Tell me something," I pressed, my voice a quiet, insistent probe. "How long have you been planning to terminate me?" Cassandra glanced uneasily at Julian, a flicker of accusation in her eyes, then back at me. "It wasn't personal, Elias. Just strategic restructuring. The board's mandate." "How long?" I repeated, my gaze unwavering. 6 months, maybe 8. The board wanted dramatic changes, wanted to bring in younger, more agile talent, reduce operational costs. "Julian's salary is 65% of what we were paying you. 8 months. While I was working countless overtime hours, meticulously perfecting the Sterling calibration for the Ethereum tower, ensuring its flawless integrity, Cassandra was already systematically planning my replacement. While I was patiently mentoring Julian, genuinely believing I was training a promising apprentice, he was meticulously studying my craft, not to learn, but to usurp. "Did you ever intend to keep me on as a consultant?" I asked, a final test of her honesty. "Originally, yes," Cassandra admitted, avoiding my gaze, her voice barely a whisper. "But then you started asking pointed questions about our new material sourcing, making comments about unacceptable stress tolerances. The board felt you might become a bottleneck, a liability to our new design goals. A bottleneck because I insisted on uncompromising structural integrity, on buildings that would stand the test of time, not just quarterly reports. A liability because I dared to question some of Cassandra's technically unsound decisions in front of influential clients and board members, prioritizing safety and quality over her reckless pursuit of speed and cost-cutting. "Show him the contract," Cassandra grunted to Julian, her voice strained. Julian, trembling slightly, pulled a sleek folder from his jacket and slid it across the table. Inside was a consulting agreement, a paltry offering of $100,000 to provide technical transition assistance for 90 days. $100,000? I scoffed, a genuine mirthless laugh escaping me. For 20 years of irreplaceable institutional knowledge, every blueprint of our most complex designs, and my intellectual property, that's what you call a generous offer considering the circumstances? Cassandra's face tightened, a mask of fury struggling to contain her desperation. I picked up the contract, its glossy paper feeling flimsy in my hands, and began to read through it. Standard non-disclosure language, restrictive non-compete clauses, and a particularly insidious section requiring me to provide complete, detailed documentation and all-access credentials for all design processes and proprietary techniques developed during my employment. They wanted me to hand over everything, every secret calculation, every unique structural solution, every intricate calibration I'd built to ensure Metropolis's legendary resilience. And in exchange, they'd pay me what Cassandra probably spent on her weekly penthouse floral arrangements. "There's one rather significant problem with this, Cassandra," I stated, closing the folder with a soft, decisive thwack. "What's that?" she demanded, her voice sharp. "You assume I have any desire whatsoever to continue working with you, or for Metropolis." Cassandra's face hardened, her eyes blazing with a desperate, cornered fury. "Elias, be reasonable. You're unemployed. You're facing potential federal criminal charges, and your reputation in this industry is going to be utterly destroyed when word gets out about today's debacle. This is your chance to walk away with something, anything." "My reputation?" I smiled, a cold, unyielding smile that reached only my lips. Industrial sabotage isn't exactly a selling point for future employers, is it? Cassandra, I continued, leaning forward, my voice resonating with an authority she no longer possessed, a quiet storm gathering. Do you know who called me this morning? She looked genuinely confused, her brow furrowed. What do you mean? At 7:30 a.m., before I even arrived at the Metropolis headquarters, I received a phone call from Daniel Hayes at Urban Genesis Group. He wanted to discuss a critical leadership position, their new Chief Urban Development Officer. Seems they've been meticulously watching my work for months, particularly impressed with the resilience and unique aesthetic integration I applied to the Ethereum Tower designs. Julian's eyes widened in dawning horror, a silent gasp escaping his lips. Cassandra went utterly pale, a sickly green hue washing over her face, as if all the blood had drained from her veins. The job pays twice what you were paying me, I continued, relishing the moment, the words a hammer blow. Plus substantial stock options and a very generous signing bonus. You're lying, Cassandra stammered, but her voice lacked any conviction, a mere whisper of defiance. I pulled out my phone, its screen a beacon of truth, and showed her the missed call log. 7 missed calls from Urban Genesis Group between 7:30 a.m. and 2 p.m., all from Daniel Hayes. I paused, letting the information sink in. He called back during your little board meeting, Cassandra. Left a voicemail asking if I was interested in discussing immediate opportunities. Funny thing is, he already knew I was leaving Metropolis. Said he'd heard rumors that significant management upheavals were imminent regarding our design leadership. Cassandra's face went utterly white, a ghostly pallor. That's impossible. Is it? I challenged, my gaze piercing. Who's been handling the Ethereum Development's contract negotiations for the past 6 months? Who's been providing them with detailed insights into our design capabilities and structural integrity issues? The truth, a brutal, undeniable force, hit her like a freight train, visible in the sudden, gut-wrenching realization that contorted her features. Victoria Miller, the board member who'd been pushing hardest for operational changes and cost efficiency, was also the former Chief Operations Officer of Urban Genesis Group's main competitor, Vanguard City Planning. She'd been meticulously feeding crucial, high-level information to Urban Genesis Group for months, helping them understand exactly what Metropolis's true design capabilities were, and more importantly, who was truly responsible for them. Victoria set this up, Cassandra whispered, a tremor of pure terror in her voice. She orchestrated my downfall. She's been subtly recruiting me since January, I confirmed, my gaze steady, unflinching. Discreet conversations at industry summits, casual questions about my satisfaction with current management, subtle hints about better, more aligned opportunities. I turned her down, Cassandra, because I thought I owed you loyalty, 20 years of it. Julian was staring at the table, his eyes wide, probably realizing that his brand new job, the one he'd so eagerly snatched, might not be as secure as he'd naively thought. If Urban Genesis Group, armed with my knowledge, poached Metropolis's key technical personnel and acquired its core IP, they could undercut every contract bid and effectively steal the entire client base, leaving Metropolis a hollow shell. But today changed my mind, I continued, watching the complete, devastating realization dawn in Cassandra's eyes, a slow, agonizing burn. When you summarily fired me in front of the entire board, you made it abundantly clear that 20 years of partnership, of unwavering trust, meant absolutely nothing. So, I called Daniel Hayes back. Cassandra frantically grabbed her phone, her fingers fumbling. I need to call Victoria. I need to find out what she's planning. Too late for that. What do you mean? She stammered, her voice a desperate plea. I checked my watch, a theatrical gesture, savoring the moment of pure, unadulterated dread on her face. At 5 p.m. today, Urban Genesis Group is officially announcing the acquisition of Metropolis Design's entire intellectual property portfolio. They've purchased the exclusive rights to our Ethereum Tower designs, our proprietary urban flow algorithms, and our resilient infrastructure protocols. That's impossible. We own those systems, Cassandra blustered, a last, futile attempt at defiance, but her voice was weak, defeated. You own the blueprints and the models. I own the patents and the trade secrets. The silence stretched across the table like an unbridgeable chasm, vast and suffocating. Cassandra's mouth opened and closed without a sound, a fish out of water, gasping for air. Julian looked like he might vomit right there in the booth, his face a sickly green. The patents, the trade secrets. Cassandra finally managed to croak, her voice barely a whisper, the words a death rattle. filed meticulously in my name over the past 5 years, I finished for her, each word a nail in the coffin. Every major structural innovation, every unique aesthetic solution, every piece of genuinely innovative urban design. My lawyer assured me that as the actual inventor and developer, I retained all intellectual property rights and trade secrets, regardless of my employment agreements. It was true. My attorney had advised me years ago to file patents on my major innovations and meticulously document my unique processes, partly for protection and partly for the simple, well-earned pride of creation. I'd never once imagined I'd need them as leverage against my own company. The Ethereum Tower designs alone are valued at $12 million in licensing fees, I continued, piling on the agony, each figure a fresh wound. The proprietary urban flow algorithms are worth another $18 million. The resilient infrastructure protocols, aesthetic integration methodologies, seismic stress analysis techniques, Urban Genesis Group estimates the total portfolio value at a staggering $87 million. More than the $75 million contract Cassandra had just lost by firing me. More than Metropolis Design's entire annual revenue. Enough, in fact, to put her company out of business if a direct competitor controlled this technology. "You can't do this, Elias." Cassandra's voice was a desperate, raw rasp, a plea lost in the wind. "I already did. Signed the exclusive licensing agreement an hour ago. Urban Genesis Group gets exclusive rights to my patents and trade secrets for 5 years. In exchange, I get a Chief Urban Development Officer position, significant equity in their company, and 25% of all licensing revenue." Cassandra was staring at me as if I'd suddenly grown a second head, the same expression of bewildered disbelief she'd worn earlier when I told her about the sterling calibration. The look of a woman realizing she'd catastrophically miscalculated, that her ruthless ambition had led her to ruin. "What happens to Metropolis?" Julian asked quietly, his voice barely a whisper, tinged with a desperate hope. "That depends entirely on Cassandra," I said, meeting Julian's gaze squarely, my answer a cold, hard truth. "Urban Genesis Group is willing to negotiate a licensing agreement that would let you continue using my patents and trade secrets for a fee." "How much?" Cassandra managed to choke out, the word barely audible. 60% of gross revenue. The number hung in the air like a death sentence, sealing Metropolis Design's inevitable, agonizing fate. The bankruptcy filing, when it finally came 8 weeks later, felt less like a shock and more like the inevitable settling of dust after a long, violent storm. I was comfortably seated in my new, spacious office at Urban Genesis Group's bustling new facility in San Francisco, the city lights twinkling outside my panoramic window. I was reviewing intricate urban renewal plans for a major coastal city in California when my assistant, a bright young woman named Sarah, brought me the news. Metropolis Designs had filed for Chapter 11 protection, citing unsustainable operational costs and the unforeseen loss of critical intellectual property and trade secrets. The words, though expected, still carried a faint echo of the past. Cassandra, predictably, had fought tooth and nail. She'd hired 4 different law firms, each more aggressive than the last, challenging my patent claims in federal court, even attempting to have me arrested for corporate espionage. But truth, unlike ambition, is unyielding. Nothing stuck. The patents were legitimately filed and unequivocally mine. The licensing agreement with Urban Genesis Group was ironclad, and my departure from Metropolis had been entirely her choice, orchestrated by her own short-sighted hand. She'd also tried, with a foolish, desperate bravado, to operate without my patented systems and undocumented techniques. For 3 agonizing weeks, Julian and a hastily assembled team of contractors attempted to rebuild the entire design infrastructure from scratch, scrambling to create new methods to replace the sophisticated, patented algorithms and proprietary design processes. The results were catastrophic. Ethereum Tower designs failed critical structural reviews, urban flow simulations crashed, and the final presentation for Metropolis's largest client, a major municipal development board in New York, went down for 48 grueling hours, causing widespread project delays and massive financial losses throughout their network. The lawsuits, a relentless tide, followed swiftly and mercilessly. The Municipal Development Board sued for breach of contract. 3 other key national clients immediately terminated their agreements. Urban Genesis Group, now armed with my proven, reliable systems and a pristine reputation for genuine innovation, swept in to capture every abandoned contract, establishing itself as the undisputed leader in bespoke urban development. Victoria Miller, the former board member who had played her own subtle game, quietly resigned from the Metropolis Designs board 2 days before the bankruptcy filing. She'd already accepted a lucrative consulting position with Urban Genesis Group, helping to seamlessly integrate newly acquired assets and strategically transition former Metropolis clients to our superior design capabilities. Her foresight, like mine, had paid off. Julian Thorne lasted precisely 4 months before Cassandra, in a final, desperate act of corporate self-preservation, had to let him go. The kid, for all his ambition, simply wasn't qualified for the critical position he'd been hired to fill. And without my patented systems and undocumented techniques to maintain, there wasn't enough specialized technical work to justify his exorbitant salary. He ended up taking a junior analyst job with a small consulting firm in Denver, making barely half what Cassandra had so glibly promised him. A harsh lesson learned, no doubt. The final, crushing blow came when the bankruptcy court approved the asset sale. Urban Genesis Group purchased Metropolis Design's client list, studio equipment, and the remaining scraps of intellectual property for less than Cassandra owed in accumulated legal fees. The company that had taken 20 years to meticulously build, the empire my father and I had painstakingly forged from the ground up, was liquidated in a single ignominious afternoon. A legacy reduced to a footnote. I didn't attend the auction. There was no need. Instead, I spent that Thursday morning working with my new, brilliant team on a comprehensive, resilient, urban park design for a bespoke commission for a renowned cultural institution in Los Angeles. This was real work. Intricate aesthetic and structural challenges that truly mattered. High-impact projects that would be rightfully credited to the dedicated people who actually designed and implemented them, not to those who merely took credit. Maria met me for lunch at a quaint local eatery near the Urban Genesis Group facility. She'd been my unwavering support through the entire tumultuous transition, a steadfast beacon in the storm, never questioning my decisions, never once suggesting I should have handled things differently. "Any regrets, my love?" she asked softly over our gourmet sandwiches and local craft beer, her eyes searching mine. I thought about it. Cassandra Hayes had systematically destroyed our partnership, betrayed 20 years of unshakable trust, and brazenly tried to steal credit for my life's singular work. But her short-sighted actions had also, ironically, freed me from a stagnant, toxic situation that was slowly but surely extinguishing my passion for the very craft I loved. It was a liberation, albeit a painful one. "None," I said, meeting her eyes, a deep sense of peace settling over me, a quiet triumph. She smiled, her expression warm and knowing. "Good, because Daniel Hayes called this morning. He wants to discuss significantly expanding your team here at Urban Genesis Group. He says they're forecasting unprecedented growth in global demand for your patented solutions and unique urban design expertise. My ideas were truly valued now. My critical contributions were not only recognized but celebrated, and my name proudly appeared on every new patent application. The generous signing bonus had completely paid off our mortgage, freeing us from that burden. The stock options would comfortably fund our retirement, securing our future. The substantial salary was more than enough to let Maria finally pursue her true passion, writing her historical fiction full-time, something she'd dreamed about for years, a dream now within reach. Cassandra Hayes, on the other hand, was now working as a regional sales manager for a struggling architectural software company in Cleveland. I'd heard through industry contacts that she was making about 30% of her former salary, living in a small, nondescript apartment, and telling anyone who would listen that her former business partner had maliciously stolen her company. Julian Thorne had found work debugging antiquated legacy systems for a small firm that specialized in maintaining obsolete software, a far cry from the global design optimization he'd once pursued. Victoria Miller was making more money as an independent consultant than she'd ever made as a board member, strategically guiding other companies through intricate acquisition strategies, a testament to her own sharp maneuvering. The truth was simple, immutable, and etched into the very foundations of the city. Actions have profound consequences. And eventually, everyone, absolutely everyone, pays for their choices. Sometimes, it just takes a little longer than you'd expect for the final bill to come due.